Hello everyone. So today we will be working on lab number two. This particular lab is very important. We'll create the game scene and we will play with the player, different properties of the player. So we have five main tasks, but we're gonna learn a lot of things in this lab. So please pay attention, and if you will have any questions, any issues, just send me an email. So let's start creating the game scene and let's do the player setup. So let's see how we can do that. So first step is we're gonna click the Unity Hub. We need to create a new project, and please save this game scene and all that the lab work because we're gonna continue this project for next coming labs as well, because eventually we will have our own game as well. Like it's basically a moving player game. Now let's create new. We're gonna use the 3D, so keep selected 3D. The project, we can put a name, let's say lab number two, or for example, whatever you want to name it. I'm gonna name it Cube Runner because I will continue this game for next step as well. So let's hit create. Once you hit create, it will automatically open the Unity game engine. You can also call it Unity editor, where we can create the games and all that scene. All right, so now once you see this is basically the Unity game engine, in fact, where we will create our scene, put the players, and by default, whenever you open it up, you will see here the main camera and the direction light, and these are called the game object. I think we are already discussed about the game object, but let me just give you a quick overview about what are the game objects, because these game objects are very important, and you should have a good understanding of these game objects. So first of all, the definition of a game object. Game object is anything, whatever you see in the game. Like for example, it could be camera, it could be lights, for example, the players, enemies, trees, grounds, everything. Whatever you see in the game is called a game object. And these game objects are basically classes. So let me just talk in a programming language. So like for example, these game objects, like the game objects which I already told you guys, it are the players, trees, grounds, whatever you see in the game are basically, these are classes. These are a class. And these game object or class is basically a container which contains the components. Let me just make it simple. So game objects are basically a class which is kind of a container which contains the component. So game object is class, and these classes, they are composed, or you can say composed of components. They are made of component. And these component, what are these components? These components can be transformed. For example, these components can be having some sort of physics, scripting, for example, audio, etc. I'll show you all these components as well. So without a component, and all these components, they got different properties. So let me repeat. A game object is nothing without the component, because it is the component which makes the game object, which provide the functionality to these game object. Without having component, game object is an empty object. And having the component could be transform, physics, scripting, audio, and things like that. Okay, so this is basically the game object. And if I look back here, this is our game object camera. If I click the camera, you guys can see here, this is the camera, and these under the inspector view, these are the components of the camera. So camera is the game object, and transform is the component. This camera is a component. Audio listener is a component. So this is basically the component of the camera. These are the properties of these components. Okay. Let me, for example, show you one thing. Transform is one of the component which is present in all the objects. All the game objects, they must have the transform. For example, if I delete the camera object or camera component, let's say, if I click here, and let's say if I remove the component, if you guys see here, once I remove the component, you don't see the camera right here. If you guys see down here, there is no camera now. I mean, the component is gone. It does have an audio listener. If I remove the audio listener is gone as well. So all I have is a empty component like this camera. It doesn't have, I mean, it is a camera, but It doesn't have any component which can give it's a functionality. Transform, because the things are gone, the camera, physically camera is gone, so there is nothing like that. We can construct a component by our own, or we can, I mean, if you want to create a component, a game object, we can add the component and we can design anything by our own. Let's do it. Let me just delete this main camera from hierarchy. Let me delete it. Okay, let's create a game object from scratch, and this is going to be our task number 1, where we are going to create a component, camera component, using an empty game object. So how we can do that? Very simple process. Right click in the hierarchy. Once you right click here, you should see 3D, 2D and all that, and let me just find out a camera. Let's click the camera. So right now, once you click the camera, automatically what's going to happen, it will automatically show you add the components of the camera, like transform, camera, audio listener, and all whatever is required. Now what we need to do is I'm going to actually click the 3 dots of the transform and hit reset. Now the question is why I did the reset. The main reason why I did reset, so it should come right in the middle of the game scene. So it will be right in the game scene. It's going to be right into the middle. Now once, if you see down here in the camera, let's see, let me create a camera from scratch rather than having this one. I mean, let me just create from scratch. Let me just delete this one. Let me take a simple, let me delete this. Right click and let me create an empty object. So let me create an empty object. This is the object having nothing else with it, just a simple empty object having a transform. And let me just hit reset, so it should be right into the middle. Let me just add a new component here. Once you add a new component, I need to get the camera. So I will go to rendering. Under rendering, I'll get a camera. So I got a camera here now, and camera does have another component which is called audio listener. So I'll go to this, go to audio, and let me get the audio listener right here. So now I have created the camera from scratch. So this was the same camera, everything has the same stuff, but this is the way how we can complete, how we can make, how we can create a game object. You can add component as whatever the functionality you want in the player or in that particular game object. So this is the way how we can create the game object. Let me just rename this game object with main camera. So just rename it main camera. So what we have learned here is we have created this main camera from scratch. We took our empty object and we made a camera here. So please take a screenshot of this and paste under your task number 1. All right, so now let's move on to our task number 2, where we have to create the game player, and we are going to make a cube runner where cube can run and it can pass the obstacles and all that stuff. That's going to be our eventual output. So what I'm going to do is let's create a new object and let's create a cube. So right click here in hierarchy, go to 3D and then pick a cube. So we got a cube down here, and if you guys see here, this is our cube, and we can actually that's our cube here, and let me just reset it again so it will be right into the middle. Okay, so it's automatically it will adjust the position if the positions have been altered. Now if you look at the cube has plenty of all right, so now if you look at this, is basically over player. That's going to be our player. So let me just introduce you a few things. This is the game object cube, and these are the components of the game object: transform, cube mesh filter, mesh renderer, box collider, and things like that. I'm going to introduce you all these things. First thing, the transform, where you can change the position, rotation, and all that thing. Then we got the cube mesh filter. This is another property. What exactly this property is? The cube filter or the mesh is basically the skin. I mean, it's kind of a skin. Right now the skin of our object is gray. It's a skin or the edges of our object. Let me show you. For example, if I click here And if I, let's say, remove the component, you guys can see here now the component is right there, but the skin is taken off. So automatically what happens, it vanished. So I'm gonna actually undo this. The mesh renderer, it is again a very, and by default, if you see the mesh is cube, if I just click this button, you can see if I pick capsule, it will turn into capsule, and other object if you want to. For now, for this particular project, we're gonna keep it the cube. Next, the mesh renderer. In the mesh renderer, there are a bunch of things. One is the size. Size mean right now how many component materials are there. Right now there is only one color, and default material is the color, and right here it's default color, which is the gray color. So right now it does have only one material and the one color. So if you want to, for example, add any material or the color to this, so what we can do is we just have to, for example, let's say you want to change the color of this cube. Let's say you want to change the color of the cube. So how we can change the color of the cube? In order to change the color of the cube, we need to go to a project view. In the project view, we just have to right click here, and if you see down here, we'll go to create, and under create there are all these options that you can create and apply. We are going to take material. So right now we got a material thing here. I'm gonna actually name this material as a, let's say, player material, for example, because our player is cube. Player material. Okay. So we got a player material here. In the player material, I'm gonna change the material. Let's say go to the color. Let's pick a color. Let's pick a red color. So I'm gonna actually RGB. So red 255, rest is 0, blue is also 0. So I got an edge like this color here. Color is set now, and let me pick the smoothness to 0. Now it is basically I got a player material which is red color, and the next thing is I want to apply this material to my player. So how we can do that? So I will drag this player material onto my cube. Sorry about that. I'll drag it down here. Sorry about that. Let me just you can apply, I mean, we can directly do that as well, or you can apply in the hierarchy like this. You can apply it. So you guys can see here we have changed the color of our object now, and which color is now the red color which we wanted for our object. And if I click the player again, which is cube in our case, you guys can see here the element, I mean the material is exactly the same, but player material, this material has been applied onto my player. So we can now change the name, the cube to, let's say this is gonna be our player. Okay, so now our player is ready. Everything is set. We got all the positions are set now, and now we need to create a ground. So now we need to create a ground for our player, so our player can stand on the ground. Okay, so in order to create that, let me again right click in hierarchy, go to 3D, and let me just pick cube again, and I'll change the stuff. And let me just position, let me go back here and reset it. Once you reset the position, now you guys can see here, because two players are right there, like the cube, which is, I mean, player actually the cube, and this new cube, they got merged. They got merged onto each other because the position is same. If I click my player and reset, and this cube, it's again on the same position. That's why you can't see that. So if you want to slightly make a difference between them, so let's select the cube which is going to be over ground. So I'm going to actually let's move the player up first. Let's clear the player, and everything else is same, but let me change the Y like upward 1. Let me change the position to 1. So you guys can see here now the new over cube is like under that. Now let's click the cube, and let me just change the cube x-axis position scale. Let's change this transform to 10, and let's change to Z to 100. And right here, this is now my play. It's ready now. If you guys see down here, this is my ground and on the ground I have my player in. Okay, so I can see my player standing on that particular ground as well. Okay, so you can see down here, this is my player, that's the ground. And right now if I go to the game view, in the game view nothing is set here because we need to align the camera. We'll do that. Now please pause the video and apply a material like cube. Let me just make it to ground, change the name to ground, and please apply some sort of new material. Pick any color and apply it to the cube. So please stop the video and apply the material, please. All right, so let's follow me if you guys still couldn't figure it out. Exactly the same way how we applied the new material to our ground. You guys can see here right now everything else is exactly the same. It has the cube mesh filter, which is again the skin, renderer, and all that stuff. I'll introduce you the box collider and some other material which we will apply. Again, right click here, create material, and let me just rename it to the ground material. So in the ground material, let me click that, select the color. You can pick any color. Let me pick, for example, this one or whatever the color you want. I mean, it doesn't matter. Let me just pick this color. Sorry. Let me just pick this color. It's a white color. Let me get something, a different kind of color. Okay, let me just get this color. So now this color is from a ground material and I need to apply this color to my ground. So again, in order to do that, I mean, this is quite, I don't like this color. Let me just pick another one. Let's get here. Yeah, let's see. For now, let's pick that color. Okay, let's pick this color. And let me apply this color to my ground. Now, if you guys see here, the ground is ready. That's my player. And right now the player is right in the middle of the ground. I mean, in the scene. So I will go back to my player and let me just move my player to the start. So position is going to be -45. So now, if you guys see down here, my player has been moved to the start. Like if you see, it is basically at the start of the game, or you can say the object. It's basically back to that. To the start point. All right, so now, okay, so we need to align the camera here. So how we can align the camera, just go to main camera, and right now I have already done that in the break when I was setting the scene. So what we're gonna do is I will go to game scene, game object, and then go to the camera, and sorry about that. So camera, sorry about that, I have added a camera. Let me delete this object. So the main camera, click that, game object, go to the camera. Oh, sorry, go to the align with view. Once you click align with view, if you go to the game scene, now you can see whatever, I mean, the way how it can be, like you can see the camera, I mean, how it will be appear to the user. You can change the view if you want to, like this. I mean, that's basically the view, top view, side view, or the bottom view, like the way how you can adjust. I just want to actually show you something. So this is basically how the game will now look like to the player. Okay, we can always change the view as well. All right, last thing for today is the game player. I'm gonna apply the physics to the player. So let's click the player. Once you click the player, then let me just add another material to the component to our player. Let's create add component, and let's go to physics, and under physics we're gonna apply rigid body. Like the body should have mass, body should have gravity and things like that. Let's apply the rigid body. Once you apply that, what you will see there, you will see under the rigid body you got a mass, drag, air friction, and some other stuff as well. Now after you apply the rigid body, let me just demonstrate that. What does it mean? If I click the player, if I click my player, and now for example, if I let me just show you what this physics means to us. If I slightly change the position of my player, And let me show you how it will respond now. If we go to the game scene now, you can see it is basically above, and if I play the game, you guys can see here, because we have applied the physics to the player, to the game object. So if we go back to the scene, you will see it is basically now going back. If I go to the game object, play the game again, you will see it will go back to the start and it will apply physics. Let me play it again. You guys will see it will apply, it will, because the gravitation has been applied to the player. Now one more thing, the last thing for to let you know the role of this this particular component, box collider, and you will see this this box collider is present here in the player. It is present in the ground. It has to be present in the ground. So what is basically the box collider? If I go back to the scene, show you the box collider. Let's say this is the ground, and for example, in the ground material, like this is the ground. If I remove the box collider, let me show you what will happen if I remove this component. You guys can see here, once you apply, let me go back, once you play the scene, it will penetrate, it should penetrate. Let's see. Oh, let's see why it's not. Let me see, ground. And if I remove the component, go back to the player, it does have there, go back to the scene, let's start, and ground should, let's remove it, and let's play the game. No, let me just play the game and let me show you what's going to happen, because I just removed that the collider. So it should penetrate, because there would be, exactly, you guys can see here, it doesn't allow them to stick on the ground, because it penetrates. There was no colliding component present right there if you remove that the box collider. So let me just get the box collider here in order to stick it right there. Let's go to component, go to the physics and the box collider. So that's basically, if we got the box collider back, if I play the game again, now you will see that it will stick onto the ground. So just take a screenshot of this environment, and that's it for our today's lab. That's going to be over task number 5. If you will have any questions, we will continue from here in the lab number 3, where we will actually put some more movements and things like that. We will put some more materials and more components as well. So let me know if you guys will have any questions.